Hey everybody, what is up? It is Drew from the Drew Experience. Yes, we are rebranding from Experience to Drew Experience because when you come on my show, it's an experience for the conversations we'll have. Conversations to level up with Canadian geopolitics and discipline through martial arts. But today, I gotta be honest. Before that though, make sure to like, share, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds. If you if you want to support independent media, I gotta buy me a coffee with my socials. They're all on my YouTube channel for those for X, Instagram, and whatnot, and also Instagram. So make sure to like, share, subscribe to help support independent voices in Canadian conservative media. And with that, today we've got a heavy weight in Canadian politics stepping into the conversation. Former federal minister, longtime MP, and a key voice in shaping Canadian economic policy to help to steer Canada into the right direction. I'm joined by the Honourable Tony Clement. And this is someone who's been in the room where major decisions get made. And I'm fired up for this one. Welcome to the Drew Experience, Minister Tony. Or former,
Hey,
how do I address you? It's like,
I usually get, hey, you, don't worry about it. It's whatever you want. Tony's fine.
amazing. And how's everything been for you since with the playoffs and just life in general?
Yeah, I'm wearing my my Habs jersey from a couple of years ago. It's great to be on your program, first of all, and definitely very excited about the playoffs. And as we speak, the Les Canadiens de Montréal made it official that they're into round 2 of the playoffs, which is very exciting. So yeah, it's very entertaining hockey right now. So let's enjoy it while we can, right?
Amazing. They're the only Canadian team left. Another technically Canada's team. They've been through this before in 2021 when everybody was doubting them, and then
Right.
they went on that miraculous run. But now it's different. In year 4 of a rebuild, which is crazy. It's like the city's on fire. Like I'm picking up my 3-player T-shirts in about a week in Demidov, Suzuki, and Gooley. I like Gooley. I like stay-at-home
Yeah,
defensemen.
Gooley's good. Yeah, they're all good. Yeah. And listen, I've been supporting this team since the mid 70s, so I've seen so many iterations and those glorious years with Larry Robinson and and Steve Shutt and Serge Savard. I can go on, but those are the ghosts of the past. But we've got a real franchise team this year for sure. So I'm very excited about it.
Definitely. I definitely agree. So we could talk hockey all night, but we got to talk about what really matters to Canadians, the fate of Canada, which we're going to break down. I've given you the topics, as you know. So I got to ask, what got you into public and what made you want to run in politics and what shaped your views to become a conservative?
Yeah, when I was sort of growing up, obviously we had Pierre Trudeau as the prime minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And so, I kind of reacted to that. He had very statist policies, very socialist policies, I would argue. The marketplace was, and the idea that of free markets, he wasn't really into that. He was the first one to have substantial federal deficits. And so I kind of reacted to that as a young person. I felt like my freedom was being taken away by overextended government. And so, yeah, I ended up growing up believing in freedom, free markets, and the idea of individual responsibility. And so that's what kind of powered me forward. And I felt like that at some point in my life, I wanted to be in politics and express those views. And so I took the opportunity when it arose. It wasn't something like I had a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, Drew. I just felt like if the opportunity arose and I got I had an opportunity to be part of Canada's politics, that I would take that chance.
That's amazing. I wanted to also follow up with what you said there because you grew up under Trudeau Sr., but also, too, we did have a conservative government that 1 year with under the Honourable Joe Clark, and you had so many historical events happen, like the hostage crisis when the Islamic Revolution in Iran. You had the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. What was it like to grow up back then? Because I'm a Cold War I have my BA in Cold War history and foreign policy, and also I'm a big Iran advocate, as you've seen with all my posts and all with what I do. So I wanted to know, what was the mood like in '79, like from your lens as someone who's lived through that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, actually, because it wasn't just domestic politics that helped shape me. It was the international situation. It really started with the loss in the Vietnam War,
Hmm.
and then the Islamic Revolution in Iran. All of a sudden, the world became, I felt, less safe. And you're right. We were in the height of the Cold War at the same time. The Soviet Russians were expanding their influence in Africa and in Asia, and so I reacted to that as well. That the world was becoming less safe, the world was becoming less free. The Islamic Revolution in Iran was interesting because at the time there was talk about how radical Islam was going to be a new force in geopolitics. Some people discounted that, said it wasn't going to happen, that it wasn't really the case, but it ended up being very important, reshaping geopolitics by becoming a focal point for Islamic thought. And obviously, this was beyond just the Middle East. This was something that was having an impact all over the world. So
Hmm.
yeah, that was a time when we were uh, when you had the hostage crisis in Iran, as you remember. Then, of course, all of the proxy wars that were going on in the Middle East and elsewhere. Again, less freedom, democracy, more concern for the geopolitical order. And then, when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, you had another shift in geopolitics with the fall of the Soviet Union, the freeing up of the Eastern European countries that
Hmm.
were part of the Warsaw Pact. And at that time, I was a young man. I just got out of law school. And I thought, this is really an interesting time to be involved. And so even though I was a young lawyer, I took a chance and actually started working in the former Soviet Union and in Czech Republic and
Wow.
in Romania, places like that, and started using my legal skills and my political skills to be part of that revolution that was happening in Eastern Europe. So that was a part of my awakening as well. It wasn't just being an observer, but also being part of what was going on in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe.
Tony, I want to also add something to that there in 1989 because you said the Berlin Wall, but and when it comes to hockey, as we were discussing, there was two significant events that happened too. We finally got the Slavic athletes that we were looking forward to seeing. We could only see in the World Juniors. Peter
Mm.
Nedved, for one, like Peter Nedved. Just gotta say, I gotta show this to you here because because I'm a bit superstitious. But like here, for example, like I have like a Peter Nedved hockey card from
Okay.
1996, 97. Nedved was one of my heroes because of how he basically defected to Canada. I'm sure you remember that he defected in the West to Calgary as a refugee. He claimed asylum and under the amazing Brian Mulrooney, who's my biggest influence, granted him refugee status. And then as a thank you, Peter played for Team Canada in 1994. 1991, you had Sergei Fedorov who fled, and then that almost caused World War III. So it must have been a crazy time for you, like to see all this history just come in from like 1979, 89, and then 1990 and 91, basically.
Yeah, and even before that, I mean, the most seminal event in hockey history, really, international hockey, was the 1972 Summit Series between
Hmm.
Canada and the USSR. You can't forget about that. That was the real start of it all. The first time that you had elite players from Canada and from the USSR clashing. And I was like totally enthralled as a young person by this 1972 Summit Series. I remember watching the games, particularly the final game, the game 8, which Canada won 6-5 on a goal by Paul Henderson with 34 seconds left. And I still remember it all. I mean, everybody watched that. Like the whole country stopped. And
Hmm.
I was in school. I was in public school, and they wheeled in the television set to the
Yes.
classroom so we could watch the game. That's how important that game was. So it meant a lot. Coming out of that, that's when you started to see some of these elite players.
Hmm.
Firstly, through defections. I mean, one of the first ones was actually a Czech player, Václav Nedemansky.
Yes, Big Ned.
Big net, and they had to defect. They had to flee their country with the help of Canadians, and then they played in the NHL. So that was really exciting to see the game become internationalized, where you could see these elite players. When I was working in the Czech Republic in 1990 and 91, I remember going to the ice hockey arena. I was a young person practicing law and doing business in Prague, and I would go to the hockey arena for 50 cents to see a hockey game.
What? That cheap back
Yeah,
then?
yeah, 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 and you'd see, like, elite players, like Czech players
Oh
that
my
were
goodness.
good enough to skate in the NHL for 50 cents a game. So, it was just a crazy time for sure.
What was the mood like in the Czech Republic? Because I've been to Prague in 2007. I did like a trip to Israel. We did a stopover. They love Canadians. Like when they
Yeah.
saw, well, they liked me, but the kids I was with, I was 15. So, we're all immature. We're in high school. So the kids are going around going, who the Koshek is and Yarmir Yager. And
Yeah.
they're just like nodding their head, like very like fed up. And then me, they're like, "Oh," I'm like, "Can you tell me about this?" And they took an interest in me more because like they're very like they get a bunch of tourists and But
Sure.
what was it like for you back then? Because this was 2007 for me, but for you it's 1990. So right after
Yeah, oh,
the
yeah.
Velvet
Yeah.
Revolution.
Yeah, I remember I was in Moscow, 1990, and I went to Pushkin Square, which there was only one McDonald's in all
Yes.
of Moscow, in all of the USSR, and it was run by a Canadian, George Cohen, who had a bunch of McDonald's franchises in Canada, but he ran the McDonald's franchise in Moscow. So I went to that, and as soon as they found out I was Canadian, they wanted to talk hockey, right? The people who were there,
Oh
they
wow.
wanted to talk about their heroes again from the '72
Mhm.
series. Don't forget, Lemov and Tretiak and Larionov, Makarov. These were names that they all knew, and they were names that I knew because they were elite Soviet hockey players,
Mhm.
and we had built up a lot of respect for them because they were so good. I mean, they were as good, or in some cases better than the Canadian players. So
Mhm.
yeah, there was a kind of a great sort of connection through hockey that pierced through the politics of the time, and you could talk about those things with ordinary, Czechs and Russians, for example.
That's awesome. So, the Cold War ends, you're in your law career. And then,
Mhm.
obviously in Canada, we see the split between the PCs and then the reform. Jean Chrétien wins a majority. And what propelled you to then and there, like, say, okay, I'm a lawyer, but I think I can make the switch finally into civil service? And what led to that decision back in the 90s?
I was already very active politically, certainly in the '80s, in law school, and then as I started my legal career in 1988, I got called to the bar in
Mhm.
1988 in Toronto. I was already doing things like, for instance, in the 1988 election, which was the free trade election that
Mhm.
Brian Mulrooney won. I was already a campaign manager. I was a campaign manager in the riding of Davenport in Toronto uh,
Okay.
for the PC candidate in that election. We really did not have a chance to win that seat. It was a very liberal seat, but I got a lot of experience. Then in 1990 provincial election, I was a campaign manager again.
Mhm.
In High Park, Swansea, for the PC candidate in that election. So I was building up all of this. I was a volunteer. I was learning about politics, the grassroots politics, the
Mhm.
actual how to win elections type of politics, and how to communicate a story politics in those elections. So by the time I kind of had a flip in my career where I was doing work in Eastern Europe and being a lawyer and those kinds of things, being a businessman. Then the political bug really took hold. So in 1990 I was elected president of the Ontario PC party.
Okay.
And then by 1992, I was a staffer, a senior staffer in the office the leader of the third party in the Ontario legislature. He was the leader of the third party, not even the opposition, Mike Harris. And we took that from being in third place to in 1995 being in first place and winning the
Okay.
1995 election. And by that time, I was a candidate and in Brampton South, and I won my seat in Brampton South for the 1995 Common Sense Revolution, as we called it. And we were able to displace Bob Rae and the NDP and win that election. So that's where I cut my teeth and became a full-time political actor, if you will, in that very pivotal 1990.
Amazing. Then you have the 90s. So the 90s come along. We have the referendum. We have the referendum, the two Clinton administrations. Janet kind of becomes more of a centrist. You have also reform that was making big gains. And we thought in 1997, when I look back, I mean, look, I was only 5 years old, but, I'm a big history nut. So I love looking at this stuff. And reform made some gains, but they couldn't take that next level. And then Preston Manning famously stepped down. And they brought in a new voice in Stockwell Day, who you ran under. And what did you learn from both Preston and Stockwell once you said I'm going to jump federal from provincial?
Yeah, and I know both of them very, very well. Preston, when I was a staffer for Mike Harris, one of our biggest fears was that reform was going to come in provincially and become a provincial Reform Party of Ontario. So I actually brokered the meetings where Preston got to know Mike Harris and got to see that there was no need to create another party, which would have split the vote. We never would have won, the NDP or the Liberals would have won. So I got that sort of familiarity going between Mike Harris and Preston Manning. They had a mutual respect for one another, and that allowed Mike Harris to have a single Conservative Party that could win the election in Ontario. So I knew Preston very well from that moment. Later on, when I was an Ontario cabinet minister in Mike Harris's government, I still had a lot of interest in what was happening. The parties were split. I knew that we couldn't really win, really ever, if we were going to, I always used to say Canada is a bountiful country, but we can't afford to have two Conservative parties. It just wouldn't work. We needed to unite the right, as we called it. And so I was part of the Unite the Right movement. I helped organize conferences with Stockwell to unite the right. And obviously that finally did happen. I never ran for public office federally for reform or the PCs until after there was a united Conservative Party. When Stephen Harper and Peter MacKay got together, I was part of that too, but sort of in the background. And obviously, by the time 2004 came along, we had a united Conservative Party. The interesting thing was I ran for leader against Stephen Harper. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I did. I looked that up actually about you, and you came in third place, which is pretty. It just must have been quite the experience.
It was an amazing experience. Got to know the whole country, met a lot of people. I think gave a great convention speech. Stephen was just too strong and too organized, and so on. But he got to know me as a result of that. So when I ran in 2006 in Parry Sound, Muskoka, Ontario, and won by the smallest of margins, 28 votes, 0.01%, because I had to defeat a Liberal cabinet minister in order to obtain my seat. So once that happened, I knew that Stephen knew who I was and what I was capable of, and that's how I got elevated to cabinet in his first administration.
Fantastic. So I want to ask this is a two-parter. So you were in the background doing the Unite the Right, and I've looked this up because I've read Tasha Keridan's book with Adam Lafferty, if I'm not mistaken. I have both of them.
Adam DeFalla.
That's sorry, Adam. I always get the name wrong, but I've read that, and there was a time too, I've heard about those meetings where there was kind of like a meeting where there was kind of there were talks of a merger, but then Joe Clark prevented it. But how close was there of a merger? Because this is just my hypothesis. I believe in 2000, Stockwell could have beaten Jean Chrétien if Joe Clark had not prevented the merger. I do believe Stockwell could have won. So I want to ask, what would a Stockwell mandate have looked like in your opinion had everything gone the Unite the Right's way?
Well, Stock had a lot of experience, obviously, as the finance minister for the Alberta government. So he was originally from Alberta, even though he ran from BC in the federal parliament. He was originally an Alberta cabinet minister. And so we were all concerned about deficits. We were all concerned about the fiscal health of the country by that point. So I felt that he would offer a small c Conservative government of freedom, government that's spent within its means, and would have been a different sort of fiscal direction for the country, for sure. At the time as well, I think the issues of crime and criminal justice were starting to rear their head. I think we would have been tough on crime and made sure Canada was a safer place. We would have made sure that the focus was on getting the criminals rather than affecting people's gun rights, hunters and farmers and so on. So again, a different orientation than the Liberals, who were starting to really push this anti-gun policy down the throats of hunters and farmers, for example. So yeah, I think it would have been a different country. You know, Chrétien was a very savvy prime minister. Let's face it. He was tough to beat, but we were never going to beat Chrétien with a divided opposition. It just wasn't going to happen. So we had to wait patiently and then build things up. After he left the scene, Paul Martin became prime minister, and then there was a whole scandal called the sponsorship scandal
Yeah.
that erupted and engulfed the Liberal Party, which was very corrupt at the time. So consequently, that gave, a smart tactician and strategist like Stephen Harper a chance to topple them and to form government.
That's amazing. So you win your election finally by like this much in
That's right.
2006. It was this much. And then finally the Conservatives are back in. What did it feel like when you first won, and the fact that the Conservatives finally slayed a dragon of like 13 years, like a dominant power. It was like a dynasty of like 13 years.
Yeah, and we don't get that chance too often, Drew, as conservatives. It happens really once a generation. You look at the 20th century and the Liberal Party ruled Canada for 80 out of the 100 years. And that's the way the 21st century was dawning too. They're the Liberals in power. So this was really our opportunity to make a real difference and form a government under Stephen Harper. Even though it was a minority government, we felt that people were ready for change. They wanted to have a different style of government. The corruption had paid a toll on the Liberal Party. And also their fiscal policies and their criminal justice policies, as I mentioned. So we came in very focused. We had planks in our platform, not 50, just 5, and we ran on that. It was very focused, a little bit on healthcare, a little bit on justice, a little bit on cleaning out the government bureaucracy and corruption, those kinds of issues, cutting taxes. And that's what we ran on. And it was a very tight platform, focused, and but it did promise change. And that's by a small margin, but by a significant change in direction, we were able to form government in 2006.
Yes, I remember that. It was a winter election, and then there was the time after that where the Liberals and the NDP and the Bloc tried to come together. We had
Right.
another listen. 2000. Can I just say this about 2008? I remember 2008 the most for 3 elections. We had the presidential election, we had a federal election, and then we had a provincial election in Quebec.
Right.
All in the same year. It was like, everyone's voting. What's going on here?
Yeah,
I was in high
unbelievable.
school my last year, just for the record, so I couldn't vote yet.
Yeah, right on. No, it was a time of political fermentation for sure. And, on the federal scene, we had been in power for a couple of years. We still had a minority government. And, this idea that the Liberals could form, even though we won the 2008 election, we didn't have a majority. And the Liberals tried to, under Stéphane Dion, as you remember, tried to form a government to convince the Governor General that they had the votes to form a government. But their key problem was this: it involved the Bloc Québécois. And so their only chance to form a government was if they did as we call it, a deal with the devil, with the Bloc, with the separatists. And eventually that turned public opinion away from this deal. And I think the Governor General made the appropriate decision that she couldn't have this government form. She allowed us to prorogue Parliament, buy us some time, and we were able to right the ship and to continue to govern. So that was, again, a very historic moment for sure.
That I do recall. Now, obviously, now you're in the ministry, you're in economic development. Canada is facing a pivotal moment. Prime Minister Harper wants to bring in more revenue, small c government, more rights, like, give more tax credits for public transportation. By the way, for everyone that says that Stephen Harper was the worst environmental prime minister, he was giving tax credits if you bought a bus pass.
That's right.
So I don't know don't know about you guys, but I rest my case that Stephen Harper was a very pivotal prime minister for that. I don't know if that was your idea, Tony, but also there was that, and then the invention of the TFSA,
Right.
financial crisis. You guys, you really saw a lot. What was it like to be on the front lines for 2008, and what role did you have in that to make sure Canada didn't collapse like the U.S. did in
Right.
2008?
Yeah. So that was the financial crisis and the Great Recession, as it was called. We were able to come back into power in 2008. I was given the role of Minister of Industry.
Mhm.
And so part of what we had to do was to right a ship in a very tough economic situation, the global recession that occurred there. So we ended up having to spend a lot more money than we would have wanted to, I think, under ideal circumstances. But when banks weren't lending, if government didn't spend, there'd be an actual atrophy of our financial markets. So we had Jim Flaherty as our very wonderful finance minister. I was industry minister. Other people played their roles as well, and we were able to prime the pump a little bit. I was involved in something very controversial, the auto rescue. The auto manufacturers came to the U.S. government under George W. Bush and then President Obama, and came to our government and said, "Look, we can't survive. We don't have funds to survive." This is Chrysler and General Motors. So we both, the U.S. government and the Canadian government, I did the negotiations, did the auto bailout, which bought them some time, probably saved about 400,000 jobs or more, and staved off even greater depression. So yeah, these were big decisions. I won't lie, controversial at the time, but I think the right decisions. Then in 2011, when we got our majority government, and I think we just celebrated our 15th anniversary of
I
that.
voted in that election. That was my first
Oh,
election. I voted conservative in that election, I can
okay,
confirm.
okay. Now you're part of the picture for sure.
Yeah.
So that one, after that election, Prime Minister Harper asked me to take on the Treasury, president of the Treasury Board, and it gave me the responsibility to get us back to a balanced budget.
Mhm.
And so I had to do a lot of the cost cutting and review of program review, as it's called, and find programs that were extraneous or not very important, cut those, keep core programs that people relied on, and got us back to a balanced budget by the end of our term.
It's amazing. So, well, thank you for that because I was able to put some money in my TFSA
That's right.
from, so it was great. It's a great invention. I encourage every young Canadian to get into it. Like I say, and they need to bring personal finance to schools. I always, I have this theory. If we, and I say we because I'm a card carrying conservative, I took a 5-year membership after last election because
Right
I
on.
felt like, yeah, listen, like a lot, I'm like you in a way, Tony, like, geopolitics, but I'm also, when it comes to industry, my views are I think Canada can be the South Korea of North America. We have lumber, we
Mhm.
have oil, we have the critical minerals and the mines. We just have to stop getting in our own way with the red tape and the bureaucracy
Sure.
and the Ring of Fire. And I think, as I said, we have what the world needs. It's just a matter of doing it and, making a case for it with pipelines and all that. It's like, so, like, was there like like Canada too? Like, you were on the, I don't know if you were on the forefront. Were you also in the also in the room for the F-35 negotiations? Because now there's this whole
Sure.
debate about Gripen versus F-35. Everyone thinks they're a Gripen expert. Everybody thinks they're an F-35 expert. I've played the video game Ace Combat. It's a video game, but I can confirm the F-35, the F series, is a much better played. I love the
Sure.
Gripen. It's great. But the F is the rat, but the F-35 and the
Well,
F-22,
it's a stealth fighter,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
so makes a big difference to protect the pilots and to keep in the air. And you need that stealth technology, 5th
Mhm.
generation stealth technology. So, yeah, I know I'm a big fan on the F-35. I managed to visit their plant. Now, part of their construction happens in Canada too. Part of the
Mhm.
wing parts and the tail parts are actually constructed in Winnipeg and elsewhere.
Mhm.
So it's an American plane, but it definitely has some Canadian tech, some Canadian manufacturing as part of the global supply chain that
Mhm.
produces the F-35. But the assembly is definitely done in Texas, and I managed to visit that plant, and it was it was pretty cool to see those things in a plant that is a mile long, to see the assembly of these five. So I would say that that's the better bet for the RCAF and for Canada's needs. Now, we're going to need all sorts of equipment, Drew. Now, when I was in government, of course, a lot of our defense spending was going into the war in Afghanistan. Let's not
That's
forget.
true. You're still there.
We were still there. A lot of brave soldiers died in that war, and but we were spending a lot of money in that fight against the Taliban. And I managed to visit Afghanistan during that conflict with Jim Flaherty was also there, and Peter MacKay and others. And we got to see what our brave Canadian soldiers were doing in very tough circumstances. So, but after that mission wound down, unfortunately, the Trudeau government did not invest in our military. And it's not just President Trump, Drew, who drew that to our attention. I remember being in the House of Commons when President Obama addressed the House of Commons. This is in 2016, and said, you guys have got to start spending on your military. And, it's not just Trump saying that. Democratic presidents said the same thing to us. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau ignored that, and to our detriment, quite honestly, we have not been playing the part that we should be in NATO, or protecting the Arctic sovereignty, or other things that are necessary to keep the world safe. Hopefully, that's going to turn around. I think the Canadian public sees the danger now,
Exactly. We need new rifles. I'm a bit of a second right. Look, it's not America, but like I'm very into firearms since I love history. We need new Leopard tanks. We need, from what I've understood, Tony, what I heard, what I've been told from some of my sources that are in the armed forces, was the word was when they said, okay, we're going to meet our numbers, Canada was going to South Korea, which I call the Israel of the Middle East, because they have China, they have North Korea, they have very hostile neighbors, and they're very good at their, pardon?
Dangerous neighborhood. You're right. Yeah.
Dangerous neighborhood, like in the Middle East. South Korea has the K2 tanks. They have the subs. They have a great military industry. And I heard, okay, we could partner with them. And I go, okay, that's actually pretty smart. Still stay with the U.S., but try to find other partners. And I want to get your take on what South Korea could offer Canada if we can give them the LNG, because I think that's a fair trade-off.
Yeah, no, they're great. They're great in shipbuilding. They're great in submarines, as you mentioned, some of the other material there. I don't think we should buy exclusively U.S. equipment. I think in some cases it makes sense, especially when you want interoperability with U.S. forces in a mission. That makes sense, but it's not just the U.S. And I think, listen, we're going to need a lot of stuff over the next 20 years in this country, a lot of military stuff. Not just us. Europe is rebuilding its military as well. They see the danger. Korea, you mentioned, Japan, Australia, all of these countries are rebuilding their militaries, and the Koreans, believe me, they know what danger is. I've been actually on the DMZ between North and South Korea, which is one of the most dangerous places on earth. When I was with a bunch of other politicians, and we took a bus from Seoul up to the DMZ. It's not that far away. I think it's a 45-minute drive or something. And, we were told not to use our cell phones, not to make any loud noises, not to wave our hands, because there are snipers on the North Korean side. And if they get spooked, you could get a bullet in the head. And, this is serious stuff. So yeah, the South Koreans know about danger and about living with an authoritarian regime on their northern border. So they are a very stout and worthy ally, that's for sure.
That's amazing. I like what you said there, that we could use their development too. Take it to the election 2025. You have Pierre Poilievre versus Mark Carney. You have Pierre Poilievre become the leader in 2022 against a lot of good candidates, like, Leslyn Llewellyn, Honourable Jean Charest, former Premier Roman Baber, who's now become a minister, amongst others. What was your thoughts? Pierre was like, the polls were showing, hey, we could win a supermajority. Then Prime Minister Trudeau resigns, now Prime Minister Carney comes in. What were your thoughts on election 2025 of where the Tories did good and where they need to improve, as you look at it now as a former MP yourself?
Yeah, I think it was a kind of a perfect storm hitting Pierre Poilievre, both Trudeau leaving and Trump arriving. I think the combination of the two really reset the political climate. And I think he had the right attitude, that he wanted to talk about economic issues, affordability, housing prices, chaos and crime issues. Those were all important issues to a lot of people, particularly young people like yourself, Drew. Those were the issues that drove the votes. And we did very well with 18 to 34-year-olds. We did very well with 35, 55-year-olds. Not so well if you were over 55. And the boomers kind of turned on us and were concerned about Trump and bought Carney's elbows up. I mean, I got to say this point on your broadcast, everybody criticized Pierre. Oh, he has these 3-word slogans, axe the tax, fix the budget, build the homes. He had those kind of phrases, right? They're just 3-word phrases. Well, what did Mark Carney have? He had a 2-word phrase, elbows up. So, all this time they were criticizing Pierre for 3-word phrases and they went with a 2-word phrase. Anyway, that's water under the bridge. And the result, as you said, you can read the tea leaves. We didn't form a government. We kept them to a minority. We had 41% of the popular vote nationally, which is our highest total since 1988. We had young people in our party. We had unionized workers and blue-collar workers in our party. There's all these new Canadians who are in our party and in our voter base. So it wasn't all terrible, but we didn't win the election. Conservatives wanted to win for the sake of the country. So that was disappointing. I worked damn hard in that election. I campaigned in 15 different ridings in Ontario, a couple of them in Northern Ontario where I live, most of them in the GTA. But, I think we have to learn from that result and do better next time. And from what I've seen from Pierre Poilievre, that's exactly what he's doing. He's changed the nomination process. He's changed his campaign leadership. He's doing a lot more media, which I think is smart. So, it's not all bad, and we can't lose faith. Look, I'm old enough to remember when Chrétien, ceded the prime ministership to Paul Martin. At one point, Paul Martin was at 70% approval rating.
I remember that. I was 12 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So you remember. And what happened? He won one election, but it was a minority. And then by the next election, he was gone. So as conservatives, for those who are listening or viewing us who are conservatives, don't lose heart. I believe that the Liberals currently are at the top end of their voter base, and we've got a lot of hard work to do. We got to convince Canadians that it can be a choice, but I think it's all doable and it has to be done.
I agree, definitely. I mean, look, there's some days you feel like you want to pack it in, or give up. And that's something we've seen with the floor crossers. We've heard, I'm sure you've heard stories where some people what's the point if they're going to do this? Why vote? And it's look, sometimes, you got to take it on the chin. That's right. Politics. You're going to take it on the chin much longer than others. But when you get that victory, you got to savor it. And that's why, some days I feel it's like I can't do it anymore. Then it's okay, I remember why I do this. And, and it's because of Pierre. Look, I got into politics for 3 things. I got into it because of Pierre, the way Pierre is. He's very savvy. He has a bit of that. And I'm going to use a sports analogy because politics and sports, they do overlap in different ways. Pierre is if I could compare him to a hockey player, he's like that Alexei Kovalev. He can dangle you with his debating skills and how good he is on social media. And then, sometimes he does, he's going to kind of leave you wondering, what else could you have done here? But he still got that. He still has that talent. And he's also a mix of that Dennis Rodman in a way. Doesn't go to North Korea, by the way. But
no.
Basically, I would call Pierre the YouTube, in a way, the YouTube future prime minister, because he utilizes YouTube so perfectly. It's outside the box. And then you have others copying it now. Now everyone has got a YouTube channel. Thanks.
True. Yeah, that's true. He's very savvy that way, great communicator. And so I think that we've got a message that people are going to turn into, they're going to lean into. And so I just think we have to bide our time a little bit. It looks like they've got a majority now with the floor crossers. I don't like it. I'm not saying it's illegal. It's legal. I'm just saying it's not good for democracy when that kind of thing happens. But it's happened. So again, spilled milk. You gotta move on and provide a good opposition. Plenty to talk about, Drew. Plenty to talk about, whether it's building pipelines and infrastructure, or whether it's the crime and chaos that continues in our streets, whether it's the lack of fiscal probity. Well, we thought Trudeau's deficits were bad. Well, look at Mr. Carney's deficits. So there's a lot to talk about with Canadians. And we've got to make the case that if you want a sovereign and vital country that has a future, conservatives have those solutions.
Believe so. There's a lot of good people that I've met in the party. Like I was at the convention. It's just too bad. I'm sure. I think you were there,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I met. Okay, I was there, so it's like I was like zooming around everyone. So like I'll never forget I got to give a shout out to your former colleague. He's still there, James Bazan of
Oh, yeah,
Winnipeg.
James.
James, so we're at the Shabbat dinner. My face. So by the way, like my ethnicity is like, so I'm half Iranian through my father. He was born in Iran, but he came to
Okay.
Canada. My mom is born in Canada, but she's Jewish, obviously, me a Jew, and her roots are from Belarus. So I have a
Right
very
on.
unique background of like, like what it means to know like what it means to see the world. So I see James, and James, James is he's very like jovial and friendly. He's like, "Hey," he goes, "Does anyone call you Taz?" I was like, "What do you mean?" Because Taz, like Tasmanian Devil in Looney Tunes. I go, "Oh, okay." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You got this energy to you." He goes, "Like I see you like going to everybody talking." He goes, "We need this in the party." So your
Sure.
new nickname is Taz now. So shout out to James. He was one of my favorites.
Right on.
Shoes. Joe Tay, Michelle Ferreri, especially
Sure.
Pierre and Senator Leo Housakos, who wasn't there. But Senator Leo was the reason why I really got involved because
Fantastic.
I'm sure you saw like the post about Autism Awareness Month. Yes,
Right.
I'm high functioning, but autism is a spectrum. So it doesn't mean like I'm good at performing, but when I'm off camera, there's Drew, the person, not the content creator. So
Sure.
yeah. So that's what I think it's what I
Well,
look
Leo's a great guy. He's been one of my oldest friends in politics. We've known each
really.
other for 30 years. So yeah, you've got a good mentor in Senator Leo Housakos, that's for sure.
I got two great mentors. I got him. I actually got a few. I got like I can't say there's a few. There's not a specific number. Like
Mhm.
like say like Pierre, Senator Housakos, Michelle Ferreri, like who's like, listen, I'm telling you, like I could see her running in the provincial politics eventually. I could
Oh,
see her
really?
coming back. I think so.
Mm,
Like or in the future, if something changes, things can change. As
sure.
Brian Lilly likes to say, I could see her run as leader of the Tories in the
Mhm.
future, and I think she'd be great. I would say the Iron Maiden. That's what I call her. I can't say Iron Lady because that's taken already. That's
Already
copyrighted.
taken. Yeah.
But Iron Maiden, yes, it's a band, but I always felt like Michelle, she has a way of like being with others. She has a way of like communicating, and she was one of like my biggest influences too when I told her like how she got me involved. And she said, "We need more people like you." And that's
Wow.
what I love about the Tories. I hate this. I hate it, Tony. I really dislike it. I shouldn't say hate. I really dislike it when I hear people say, "We're this, we're that." But when I'm around the Tories, I've never felt more at home. I'm included. I feel like I'm valued, not because of a podcast I do or because I'm an advocate for specific things, but I feel like I always encourage people, if you feel like you want to belong to something, come join the Conservative Party. Don't
Mhm.
listen to the hype. Don't listen to what you hear. Come see for yourself, join an EDA and whatnot. So I wanted to really endorse the Tories for what
Oh,
they've
for
given
sure.
me.
Oh, that's great, Drew. That's a great life story. And listen, you're just at the start of your career, which is fantastic. So I wish you every success for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. I got to ask you this, Tony, because you've been in this game for a long time. Technology has changed. The way politics is done has changed. Where do you feel the future of Canadian conservatism lies as we evolve in the 21st century and beyond?
Yeah, I think our core remains the same. It's freedom. It's limited government, limited but effective government, and also compassion for people, working people in particular, but also people who are struggling, that kind of thing. So I think those are the core elements of being a conservative. Now, what happens over time is that the particular issues change.
Yeah.
The issues that I ran on in 1995 provincially or 2006 federally, they were issues of the time. So what you have to do is adapt your conservative politics to what the issues of the day are. But the
Mm.
core has to remain the same. I think the core has got to be freedom, fiscal probity, keeping our streets safe, and compassion for those who need some help. And if we can do that, then I think the public will judge us to be worthy of political power. It's something that you have to earn every single time. Now, I'm obviously no liberal, but sometimes I think that they think that they deserve power. Deserve power. You have to earn power.
Hmm.
And I think if we keep that in mind, I think we'll be in good shape.
That's amazing. I definitely agree. And I think it's important to like have people, whether influencers or those who are podcasters, I think it's very important in today's day and age. And, as I said, like, what's your advice to someone, if you could give some advice to 18-year-old you that's fresh out of high school and, you're still trying to figure out politics and you want to learn, what advice would you give yourself, 18-year-old you back then?
Yeah, I think it's good to have a varied life, to have a lot of different life experiences. I didn't go into politics right away. I
Mhm,
started a legal career, then I had a business career.
mhm,
I got married. I had kids. I think that those life experiences are important. You can get a lot of life experiences while being a parliamentarian. Look at
mhm.
Pierre Poilievre as an example for that. But I think generally, the more you understand what people are going through, I think that's a superpower in politics, right? To have that empathy and to have adversity. I had a lot of adversity in my life. Grew up the son of a single parent, and as an immigrant to this country. So I remember my first job was at my dad's restaurant in Hamilton, and I got paid $35 a week to work 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. as a
Oh,
summer job.
wow.
So it was hard work. So I say that just because that gave me a perspective and it gave me an understanding of how you got to work hard and working hard is good for you. And so I think all of these life experiences make you a better person, more somebody who people can empathize with and can attach themselves to. So all of that I think is pretty important if you're going to have a political career.
That's amazing. Tony, where can people connect with you if they want to see the work you do? Because you're you're on like on every social, you're on different podcasts. I found out about him. Shout out to Steve Paikin, by the way.
Yeah.
Great podcast. I think Steve's a
Thank you.
great way. Like, look, when you come in, look, I'm gonna say this about politics. I came in, I was very idealist. I was an idealist. When you come in, you're a populist idealist. When the tour we lost, I think it was the best lesson for me because it was able to help me broaden my view, but understand and become more pragmatic. And I know pragmatic gets thrown around so much, but it helped me get involved provincially. It helped me get involved municipally. And yes, in Quebec, I'm a member of the Quebec Liberal Party because we don't really have a conservative party. Well, we do, but they're still very new.
Yep.
They're just not with my views. And I like the leader of the current Quebec Liberals, Charles Millard. He has the same
Right.
views as I do.
Right.
And I think that's the best thing that ever happened to me. As much as people say, "Why are you happy you lost?" Because it helped open the door and see new horizons.
Sure. Yeah, I encourage people. I have a business life. I'm a tech startup guy, so I'm involved in a number of startups in the tech and healthcare spaces and so on, and help new companies form and be successful. That's how I spend a lot of my time. I'm also a consultant, but I do have a media profile as well, as you alluded to. So got a new podcast that I do with Steve Paikin called Everything Political. So Steve and I launched that with Martha Hall Finley, a former Liberal MP. She's pretty right of center for a Liberal MP, I must say. She's now in Calgary. So anyway, we every 2 weeks we pump that one out, and then I have a television show called Boom and Bust. It's mostly about financial, economic issues, tech issues, cyber, national security, international security. And you can find that on a fledgling new television news station called the News Forum. You can find it on Bell, Rogers, Telus, Shaw, all of the major channels, cable channels. And so I've done over 600 shows of that particular TV show. So definitely look me up. Tony Clement CPC is where you can find me on the socials. And yeah, I'd love to chat with people for sure.
Amazing. Well, Tony, I really thank you for doing this. And if you ever want to do it again, come back on, be great. I hope I was a great host. I want to make sure.
Fantastic, Drew. Keep it up, man.
Thank you. I think we need more unfiltered conversations to like get to shed the light through the layer between the politician. That's what I try to do. And I'm trying to bring people to the conservatives to show them, listen, it's not what you think it is. You got someone like me. I'm a light blue Tory.
Right.
I'm a light blue Tory, but so listen, come on down, I would say get involved with your EDA.
Sure.
So guys, make sure to follow Tony with what he said. If you like what I do, follow the Drew Experience. As you see, Drew Experience on all my platforms, and there's more coming. This is a new start. We're rebranding. We got Tony wearing his Habs jersey. We got me back in the podcasting chair with my new equipment. There we go. You see, Tony, I got to say this. I got to say this before the recording stops. I got to say this. You're the first guest that I'm using my new equipment with. So you have that honor. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. It sounds really great, Drew. So keep it up for sure.
Thank you. And keep up the great work, Tony. It's great that you're with us still. As I said, if you ever want to do round 2, let's do it again. Keep up the great work, man. You're educating new Canadians. You're educating Canadians like myself every day.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you keep up what you're doing. I think it's really important to have people like yourself commenting and learning and doing these interviews. So keep it up, Drew. The Drew Experience.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Okay.